Critical controls. Are they even controls in the first place? If we took away things like training, inspections, maintenance, names of procedures, supervision from your bow ties or your risk assessments, how many controls would be left? Welcome to episode 3 of the Critical Controls mini-series. I'm Christian Young. You're listening to Safety Cast, and this is the podcast for people who are interested in saving lives at work. And today we're looking at an interesting question and a challenge that we see all the time. Are your controls really controls? For those watching, I have some notes here, so I will be flicking back and forth, so bear with me. I want to give you the best value that I can. So I see, and we see bow ties all the time across industry, and some can look pretty impressive because there's a lot of volume inside of it, certainly when it comes to preventative controls and mitigating controls. And we all feel good, we all pat ourselves on the back because we think the more things there are, the more protected we are. But there's an uncomfortable reality here that quantity doesn't equal quality, which probably makes sense. And in fact, what we found is for most organizations, 40% of what they have listed in their bow ties is essentially rubbish from the perspective of it doesn't give them the protection that they feel like it should. We know if we think about a bow tie, I like to think about it, the flow of energy. So if I have a control in a pathway, does it either prevent a flow of energy leading to an unwanted event, or does it mitigate how much energy is released following an unwanted event? And so our controls, our true controls, are designed to do either of those, which is simple in theory, but when we look in the detail, unfortunately we see things like training, supervision, inductions, inspections, names, procedures, audits, reports, all of that goes into the suite of what we call controls. So what we need to get to then, well, what is a control? And there's a few different definitions out there. Again, I've given an example of a flow of energy. Depending on what literature you follow, there's terminologies like, is it an act, object, or system? Can it fall into one of those 3 categories? So an act is a human action, something I can see or witness. An object is an engineered control that can do what it needs to do without any human involvement. So guarding is an example of an object. And then a system is a combination of an act and an object. So an example of a system is a seatbelt, where we have the human action of someone putting on the belt, and then we have the object, which is the reel and the belt itself and the little clicking thing as well. So can it fall into one of those categories? Is it specific, measurable, and auditable? And another one, is it mapped into the management system? So it's not an orphan control. So I call those the base definitions of a control. Then we have these other areas of, it cannot be a support activity, or does it fall into the category of a support activity or a verification activity? So support activity, what is that? They are things that we do to support the health or maximize the health of a control, but of itself is not a control. So I'll say it again. A support activity are things that we do, that we have in place that maximize the health of a control, but of themselves are not a control. So can you think what might be some examples of support activities? And I can give you some examples. So support activities are like training, education, induction, maintenance, signage. All of those things are examples of support activities. Then we think about verification activities. Verification activities, these are the things that we do that check on the health of a control, but of themselves are not a control. So what might be some examples of verification activities? Well, things that fall into that bucket are things like inspections, audits, reviews, monitoring, things like that. So what we can see here is we have a definition of a control. Then we need to check that it doesn't fall into the category of a support activity or a verification activity. If it passes beyond that test, then it can be eligible to be classed as a control. And this is what I meant at the start when I said we've seen a 40% reduction. We'll take organisations' bow ties and risk assessments, apply this framework, and there'll be a 40% reduction in what was there compared to what is actually a true control. So that's a good thing, I believe, because now we know what is truly in place in relation to this risk, and we've taken away all of the noise and the chaff and the things that were not adding value in the first place. And we have a true representation of a risk and its management. And then there might be some uncomfortability, that's okay. Then we work through the process to identify what might be some other controls that meet all of those tests. So that's the idea for today. Are the critical controls, do they even meet the definition of what a control is? If you took your list of critical controls and applied these tests, would they pass all of them and come out the other side that yes, all of our critical controls are controls? Or is there some work to do within your organisation? So hopefully I've challenged some thinking, maybe challenge what might be in place already within your business or what you've seen in industry. If you found this of value, then please subscribe. Maybe please share it with any colleagues that you think this could be of value to. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but it's necessary because it's all about saving lives at work. So until next time, stay focused on what truly matters and stay safe, and I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.